Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session inside of Inventor. So today we're going to be going over the Inventor technical demonstration or technical documentation rather, and just going to be having a look at the presentation files and how we can begin to use presentation files inside of Inventor and then take those into their various outputs as well. My name is Cameron McKenzie, and today I'm just going to be talking you through these workflows that are available to us. If you have caught any of the previous webinars that we've done or previous videos we've done, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. It's really good to have you with us. Feel free to catch up on any of the previous videos. They'll all be on our YouTube channel. And yeah, if you're keen and interested in any of the topics that we're going over or want any suggestions, feel free to drop a comment or subscribe, and we'll be continuing to bring more of these videos out, as well as a few of our other series that are going on at the same time. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm just going to head straight into the product. It should be a fairly short and sweet episode, this one. Yeah, hopefully we can dive into some more of the extra features inside of Inventor that you might not be as familiar with. I'm just going to switch screens quickly to Inventor just to make sure we're up and ready to go here. Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, up until now we've had a look at the different file formats inside of Inventor. We've had a look at the part files. We've had a look at assembly files, and we've had a look at drawing files. Today, we're going to be looking at the fourth and final file format that Inventor uses, and that's the presentation file. So I do have Inventor Professional 2023 on. It is the newest version of Inventor. I can't remember which one I used last week or last month. I think it was 22 still, but we're just going to have a look at this from the new interface. So we've got in Inventor 23, they've moved the start options to the left-hand side, and we've got a bigger recent documentation list in the middle. So yeah, essentially what we want to do with this one is we want to begin by creating a new presentation file. So in my new dropdown, I can come in and choose what file format I'm wanting to create a new document using. And in this case, I'm going to use the IPN, the presentation file format. So just click on that and create a new presentation file format. The first thing it wants to know when creating a presentation file is which file we want to be referencing inside of this presentation. Presentations will take an assembly file and allow us to present that assembly file. It could be an assembly that we've already created and have saved on a local database, or one that we just created. We'd need to save it and then bring it in directly inside here. So I'm just going to pick up this wheel assembly. This is one that we used during the assembly episode. So I'm just going to use the wheel assembly as part of this presentation. So once you've selected the file, again, navigating through your local folder structure, once you've found the file that you want to make use of, we can then just hit open, and it'll bring that file into our environment. You'll see the layout for the most part is very similar to the rest of the Inventor interface. We've still got our ribbon up at the top with different tabs and all of the different tools inside them. Although there are a few less tools available, the presentation file format is a lot more streamlined. There are a lot fewer options available or buttons that we need to worry about. It's quite a simple process to be able to get our file from as it is fully assembled into an exploded or presentation view, essentially. So you'll see up at the top, we've got our ribbon. We've got a new storyboard option. We've got a new snapshot, tweak components, capture camera, and create drawing view. So very simple with regards to that. And essentially inside of the presentation environment, what we're wanting to do is, as I've touched on already, is create a exploded view of our component. And that's the main use or the main purpose of the presentation file format. We've got a few other uses that we can make once we've created that, and I'll talk you through the different options we have. So right from the get-go, we've just taken our assembly file that we've created externally and brought it straight into our presentation file. The rest of the navigation is the same. We've got our view cube up in the top right. We can still orbit around our part. We can pan around and we can zoom in and out. So it pretty much feels like a normal Inventor file from the get-go. The main difference will be these two panels on the side or the panel on the side and the panel at the bottom. The one on the side will show our snapshot views. So if there's ever a view that we want to use and export, we can align our part to the view that we want, and we can say we want to create a new snapshot. If I hover over here, you can see we've got the ability to create a snapshot of this particular component. So if I use snapshot now, it'll take a picture essentially, or a snapshot of our part in this particular location and add it as a view. We can come in here and rename that view, and we can just call this one assembled. I don't have my glasses on, so I hope that's fine. And yeah, essentially we can create a whole lot of snapshots at the different stages of our explosion if we wanted to. So at different levels, we can have certain components hidden, visible. Very similar though to the part the assemble environment, or the assembly environment rather. So we've got the ability to hide and show particular items. Right down at the bottom, we've got our timeline, and the timeline will keep track of every single movement we make in a particular order. So to show this off, what I'll do is I'll just bring this down a little bit. We've got the ability to adjust the sizing of each of these windows or each of these panels. So if you hover over the edge of any of them, we've got the ability just with a single left click and hold to drag it back and forth to adjust its height or its width, and then the timeline at the bottom, we can adjust its height. So if you need a bit more space, you've got the ability to customize that as well. They are just little docked panels essentially. So first thing we want to do quickly on this particular one is whether you want to align your view correctly. You've got the ability to do so. I can just select the top view of this particular assembly. Not sure what's on the top view, but yeah, we can align our view to the top view so we can see our component a bit better. In our model browser on the left-hand side, same structure that we've got as we would have in an assembly or in a part. We've got our model browser on the left-hand side, or unless you put it somewhere else. And then inside of that model browser, we've got our scene, which is the current scene that we're in, plus the assembly that's inside of that. And then we've got its assembly hierarchy. So inside of that assembly, we've got our part, we've got two brackets, wheel, axle, and bolts. Now what we can do in the component panel is we can begin to tweak the positioning of each of the individual components. So I've got two ways of going about that. I can either select tweak component and then select the components that I want to tweak, or I can select the components and then tweak those. So if I come through quickly and just select, I want to remove or move the plate away from the rest of the part as my first step in the assembly. So I'm going to tweak components. I've selected the plate, then selected tweak component. I now get the triad with the different directions that we've got available to us. I can either move it down in the, I think it should be the Z in this one. Yep, down in the Z. I can move it across in the X, or I can move it forward or backward in the Y. So I can come in and choose any of those axes that I want to move it around. I've also got the ability to, if I wanted to move it in the world coordinates or the world directions, or I could choose it relative to the part. So I can choose it local. So if the part, if I wanted to move it based on the angle or the alignment of the part itself, I could align my my coordinates basically around that and pick local instead. But for the most part, it's probably going to be a lot easier if you're just using the world one, especially in this view. Sometimes it's a little harder to get the exact angle that you're wanting, or certain components need to come out at a very specific angle. And it's a lot easier if you do have something at the angle that it's associated to the assembly to just use the local one. It'll then bring it out in the Z local to the alignment of the particular part. In this case, I just want to bring it down in the Z. So I'm going to select the Z arrow over here, which will allow me to bring it straight down in the Z using the world coordinates. And I can either drag that arrow down manually, or if I knew the amount that I wanted to offset it by, I could type it in. With it going down, I'm going to put in a negative value. So I'm just going to type in over here, minus 10. 10 is a bit small, so let's go minus 40. Once I'm happy with that, I can hit the little tick box to confirm that. And that movement has now been added to my timeline down at the bottom. And we can continue doing this with all of the individual components. So if I wanted to come in and select my bracket on the left, as well as that bolt on the left and the other bolt on the left, hopefully, yeah, on the left as well, I can come in and select them from my browser. And again, tweak components, select the direction I want to move it in, or drag it in the direction I want to move it in, eyeball the distance. And if I want to put a very specific value in, say, for example, 75, I can then type the value in, or I can just eyeball it and leave it there. Once I'm happy with that, I could then hit the tick box, and then it confirms that movement. And what you'll also notice is it's giving us a duration, and we'll get to those durations in a little bit, but it's also with each movement that we do, with each tweak we do, it's giving us a duration, it's giving us a distance, and it's also giving us a trail for each individual component that's included in that movement. So I'm just going to hit the little tick box and pretty much do the same thing on the other one. So this time I'm going to select it inside of the workspace. So I can come in, shift click to select all three of those items, tweak components, and move that again, 75, but this time in the opposite direction, so minus 75, just so that they evenly apart. And then similar thing for the wheel and the axle, tweak components, move it up, probably go up quite a bit by, let's go 100 up, and hit the little tick box to confirm. And then last movement, I want to move the axle away from the wheel, but I want them to go apart evenly. So I'm going to move the axle half the distance and then the wheel the other half of the distance. So tweak component, move the axle first, but minus 80 should be fine. Do the same quickly on the wheel at 80. And now we've got an exploded view of our item. The last things we want to probably, the last items we want to tweak will be the bolts. So I can come into my browser on the side there and just move those up ever so slightly. Let's see, until they're just about clear of the bracket. So something like that. And you can see again, we've got the trail for each of those movements. So as each of these components goes through their different movements, we've now got a trail that appears there as well. So now that we're happy with the explosion, we can then move, we can essentially move to our timeline. So I'm just going to expand the timeline a bit just so we can see that a bit clearer. And you can see we've got all of the individual movements that we've made are on the timeline in chronological order. So essentially what we can do with this one is we can drag our time marker over here, the little ticker, all the way to the beginning. We could either drag it, or you'll see we've got 4 controls at the top here. So we've got skip to the beginning, or back to the storyboard beginning, or storyboard end. And then we've also got play forward and play backward. And we've got this little drop down over here, which will allow us to play all storyboards. So if you had multiple storyboards, we've got the ability to play those as well. So if I drag that, that time marker right to the beginning, or skip to the beginning, and hit my playback over here, you can see it's going to take us through the entire explosion. It takes it goes in the exact order in which we've made this explosion ourselves. If we were wanting to publish this as a video, we've got the ability to publish this as a video as well. So right at the top in the ribbon, we've got the publish panel. And from here, we can publish a video of this of this explosion. So the order in which we've made this explosion really helps in that regard. But say, for example, we wanted it just to be that little bit shorter. There are a few sections where a few of the components could be moving at the same time. And if we want to make this a little bit quicker, we'd want to move those times a little bit closer together, or those movements a little bit closer together. So for those particular items, what we can do, let me just see which ones I did at first. So you can see this movement that's happening here. I'm just dragging that time marker across to see exactly what's moving at what point. And I've got those three items. I've got the bracket and the two bolts. I've got the opposite pair or the opposite set on the next point. So essentially what I can do is come in and select all three of those items and move them back in line. So those are now happening at the same time. So as I go through my timer or adjust the time, I've got the ability to adjust all of the positioning of each of the items and the time that happens. I've also got the ability, I pointed out earlier, when we are making a tweak, we've got that duration. That's the amount of time it takes from the beginning of the movement to the end of the movement. So if, for instance, I found that this plate that was coming down at the beginning was taking a little bit too long, it's a very slow movement, it's not moving very far, I could, in fact, make that go a little bit quicker. You can see compared to those brackets moving off to the side. So what I can do is I can just select this particular movement for plate 1 on the side. I can come in and adjust its time, its duration. So hovering over the end of that particular movement, I can then click and drag that. So this adjusts the time that particular movement takes. If I take it down, it's at currently 2.5, so 2.5 seconds. If I bring that down to 1.5 seconds, it'll be that much quicker. And then I can essentially just move each of these. If I shift click, I'll be able to select each of these movements over here and just adjust them to be in line with the that other movement. And you can see how it snaps to that point as well. The next thing I want to adjust quickly is the movement of the wheel and the axle. And essentially, once these brackets have moved beyond a certain point, we can actually overlap that movement as well. We can get the axle and the wheel moving a little bit quicker to the top as well. So if I take it from about this point over here, I've got the ability to then start moving the wheel and the axle up. So I can take these two movements and drag them all the way up to that marker that I've just adjusted there. So you can also snap to your time marker as well. So now if I move the time marker along, you can see that the wheel and the axle are moving up at about the same time. Last few ones, we want to then allow those two components, the axle and the wheel, to move away from each other. So those two can also happen simultaneously. I can just drag them to then occur right after that movement as well. So as soon as they reach the top, they then start to split in their two directions. And then the last four movements are the bolts. And those can essentially just happen more or less at the same time as the wheel and the axle are coming apart. So I'm just going to take those four quickly and align them to that exact point. So we've taken a video that would have been about 15, I can't remember, it was probably a little longer than that, 18.5 seconds, and we brought that all the way down to 7 seconds. So if I take my timer all the way to the beginning and play that forward, you can now see the plate comes apart, the brackets come apart, the wheel and axle go up. Then as the wheel and axle are taken, spreading out, we're then taking the bolts out at the same time. Cool. So once we're happy with that, we could also play that backwards. So we've obviously looked at having it as an exploded view. What we could do at the same time, because we've got the ability to watch this backwards, is we can actually start to watch an assembly as well. So if you were wanting to make assembly instructions for your clients or for your workshop, you've got the ability to then also create assembly videos, which is just the reverse of the explosion. So if I take my ticker or my timer right down to the end at 7:10 and now play it backwards, we've essentially got the same video playing backwards, allowing us to show the entire assembly process. So really nice and quick. It's taken me a few minutes just to get to this point. taken a little longer than I would have needed to if I was to actually make these ones. But yeah, you can see that the process is very quick. Once you've got your assembly, you've got the ability to very quickly create these videos for output. One last thing, if we wanted to, just for making a few final tweaks to our video, we've got the ability to capture the camera angle at any moment during our process as well. So if we wanted to look at a very specific part or have a very specific angle during the process, we've got the ability to use that capture camera option. And where that really helps is if we've got, for example, if we want to watch just the wheel and follow it through the entire assembly process, we can then just allow our camera to pan along with the wheel along its process. So if I select at this very moment over here to capture camera, it will capture the positioning of our camera at this point, and then ensure that every time this playback ever happens, the camera is aligned to this wheel. So if I now move my time back to the point where the wheel and the axle are now aligned, I can then capture camera at that moment as well, aligned again to the wheel. So if I hit capture camera here, it'll add that marker into a camera row over here for us, where we can then capture that particular moment. We can then bring our timer all the way down to that point before the plate moves away. And again, we can align our view so that we can see all of the items and capture camera here as well. And then finally, right at the beginning of our time, I've probably done it the wrong way around. I could have done it the other way around, but anyway, I'll capture camera here one last time. So I've got the ability to now extend the time it takes from the first movement to the last movement for each of the camera positions. So I'm just going to move these or adjust these along just so that they overlap, so that one movement flows seamlessly into the other one, and then skip right to the end. And we should now be able to play that back and watch the wheel as it goes through the assembly process. So there's the axle coming in, the brackets coming in, and then the plate coming in towards the end. It's a bit quick. You'd probably want to slow that down a little bit if you were to make it yourself. But you can see the idea behind it of being able to follow a single component through. And you can have multiple storyboards as well. As you see, we've got the ability to create a new storyboard up the top, or we can hit the little plus icon on the side over there to add this item or add another storyboard to this presentation file. So you can have multiple presentations or storyboards inside of one presentation file, each with different timelines essentially. And then with the snapshot views, once we've got a fully exploded view of our component or of our assembly, we can then begin to capture that as well. So at this very moment, if I move right to the end of my timeline, I've obviously aligned my camera to this wheel. I could, if I wanted to, add another marker somewhere around 8 seconds that had a captured view somewhere off to the side. I can double click my middle mouse button and it'll zoom extents for my assembly. And I can then just use capture camera over here. Sorry, not capture camera, that's the wrong one. Actually, no, that's fine. Capture camera will be fine, so that whenever I start off my assembly, I'm all the way out, and then I can zoom in. If I play that back quickly, it'll zoom all the way into that single wheel and then watch the assembly process from there. So that's fine as well. But essentially, at that particular moment, we want to ensure that our camera is lined up, and then we can use the new snapshot view option. So once our explosion has happened, once we've got our exploded view, we can then capture a new snapshot at that particular moment. You can see it adds a little marker on the timeline and allows us to have view 2 down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to call this one exploded. Oh, helps if caps lock isn't on. Once I'm happy with those, so I've got the video that I can export out. I've got the images that I can then export out as well. I can export out a raster image of any of those views. But what I can also do from this is I can push any of these exploded views into a drawing. So I've got two ways of going about this. If I wanted to create a new drawing, I could come in and create drawing view. It want me to save this document. Let me just save it quickly. Do I have a, I do have that. Let me just create another delete me. Actually, let's just call this one wheel assembly explosion. Hit save on there. And we can choose the drawing format that we want, DWG, IDW, create that. And it then allows us to place down the view of our component. So you can see in our drawing view options, we've got the view option inside here, and this will link back to the views that we created, the snapshots we created. So we've got the assembled view, and we've also got an exploded view. If I select exploded view, you can see in the background, we've got the exploded view, and I can drag this or expand that, change the scaling of it, change the positioning of it. If I want to rotate this around as well, I've got the ability to rotate it around. So you've got the ability to use any of those options. We could have this as a hidden line or hidden line removed, or we could even have it as a shaded view. If I hit OK on there now, that view has now been pushed into our drawing. So we can then follow the same processes of adding annotations if we needed to, or if we just wanted to add this to an existing drawing, we've got the ability to do so as well and add other views of our parts. I do have another drawing open on one of these panels. There we go. So say, for example, we had a isometric view of the component and we wanted this as one of the title sheets for our documentation. We can then come in and actually import from an existing presentation as well. So if we had this presentation saved off elsewhere in our folder structure, as I've just had now, I could come into an existing drawing or new drawing and place down a base view of this presentation file as well. So if I select base view over here, it's automatically going to pick up my last file, but we've got the ability to navigate in our folder structure for any other parts, assemblies, and presentation files. So I'm just going to pick that wheel assembly explosion. I can come in and again choose the view that I want, and I can plop this straight in into my drawing sheet over here. Hit OK, and you can see that's from an existing drawing. We can then bring it in as a base view as well. Cool. So I think that's pretty much all we needed to go over today. So we've had a look at how we can import an assembly file into our presentations. We've had a look at how we can create an explosion of the assembly itself, how we can begin to tweak components and then take those, export that out into video format, and we can also export the individual images. Let me just show you those quickly as well, just so you're aware. So if we wanted to publish out a video of this, it'll pick this storyboard. If I go select publish in the presentation file video, we've got the ability to either publish all of the storyboards or only the current storyboard. And if we wanted very specific times inside of that we wanted to export, we've got the ability to do so. We can choose the document size or the window size, as well as the file name and the export location, as well as the format AVI or WMV. If we wanted to export a raster image of the item, we can come in from here and we can choose which views we want to create an image from. So we can come in and use any of the views that we've got in there. In this case, just picking up all of the views, and we can choose the file format we want to export the image on. Again, we've got the location that we can push that to, and as soon as we hit OK, we've got that video or image created. And then we've also got the ability to take those exploded views and place them straight into a drawing, whether it be an existing drawing or whether it be a new drawing. So a lot of functionality in there, and you can see we've been able to take a full assembly and take it from the assembly to an exploded view in a matter of minutes. So a very handy tool to make use of, and I know a lot of people are aren't as familiar with the presentation environment. And hopefully this has allowed you to gain that confidence to be able to give that a test. So yeah, thank you very much for your time joining us today. I hope it's been beneficial to you, and I shall see you guys again next time.